This is Sirens, a Bombshell production. I'm Erin Simpson.
I'm Loren Shulman.
And I'm Radha Plum.
And we are here for a little bit different conversation today. So as we mentioned in our relaunch of the first episode, we are doing a few things differently on this podcast series, including some shorter, pithier episodes that will occur in the off weeks from the main episode. So our first experiment with this is a discussion this week on summer reading. Eventually, some of this may be subscriber content or available to other sort of paid members, but for right now, you will get this entirely for free. So, a discussion of summer reading. As I think our listeners likely know, we are all avid readers year-round, but summer reading or beach reads are particularly fun. Can I ask you guys to tell me what you think makes for a good beach read or what is unique about a summer read?
What I am looking for in a summer read, which I'll admit sometimes I also want not during the summertime, is a combination of being fun, so not too deep, like I'm not trying to learn a lot about myself or the world around me, frankly. Interesting, so it's either set in a different place or focused on a particular issue and has just enough intrigue to keep me interested, but not so much that I have any level of stress at all. Which really narrows down the set of books for me in particular.
So mine is a little different. I want my summer reads to be delicious. So I read a lot of fluff during the year where it's like, this is in, this is out. I'm never going to read it again. It's fine. I want summer reads to be ones where I would probably read them again, but like Radha, they're not too stressful, but they are +1 in some area where it's like, yes, this is a romance, but it also has a lot of really good recipes in it. Or yes, this is a mystery, but it's set at this gorgeous setting in Tuscany somewhere. So it's got some additional thing that is drawing you in and is making you sort of want to sit and snuggle with it in some way, or sit on the beach and sit there and go like, I love reading this book so much. This is so great. I love everything in the world. Like that sort of vibe.
Yeah, Loren, I think I agree with sort of that. I like a summer read that's kind of immersive, right? Where you're kind of happy to like live in the book for some element of it because ideally you're able to read for a few hours at a time, right? Whether that's on a beach, maybe even on the plane on the way to the beach. But agree with Radha that they can't be too stressful. Now, to be fair, I actually don't like to read stressful books at any time of the year. And I guess what counts for stressful will vary amongst the readership. But there's different, pieces to it. That said, when I think about the books that I have like binged on a beach, I'm not sure that they meet this quality. There was one year, I remember in spring break when I was probably in high school, that I read like a different Michael Crichton book each day. And it was the first time that I've been able to just like devour a book in one setting like that. I think I read Sphere. I think I read Congo. I mean, I read like there were a lot of Michael Crichtons that got done just like one big gulp at a time.
I did the same thing with like all the Born Identity books and the books in that space.
Right.
Like, oh my God, I just inhaled those. And I've gone back and tried to read them again and be like, oh my God, I had terrible taste. This is dreadful. But at the time, it just like sucked me in an absolutely wonderful way.
Radha, do you have any binge book reads that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, my version of that, again, is very, very Radha, is Philippa Gregory writes these novels.
Oh, yes.
But they're like, I mean, they, I think, really fit in this immersive world where they're basically centered around a queen or a princess, largely traversing the Plantagenet and then War of the Roses era and then Tudor era through sort of Elizabeth. But they're centered around the drama and intrigue of a court. Plus, there's backstabbing, there's machinations, and you're transported into this weird Tudor world that is, I've been to them and I've gone back to them. They're written fine, but I wouldn't say the quality of writing is.
No. They're not going to win a National Book Award anytime soon. Have you watched any of the Stars series?
Oh, sure have. By any, I mean all.
Yeah. The Spanish Princess is good. I like that.
It is
one.
Pretty good.
So do we have some recommendations for our listeners for their summer reading this year? And I think we kind of have a mix of like new-ish books and maybe some things drawn from a general backlist, a personal backlist, something like that. Radha, what is your first pick for a summer reading book?
Yeah. So I love a good series. Let me just start there because I tend to consume relatively quickly through literature. And so in my like back catalog where I have read every single one of these books is the Molly Murphy mystery series, in which young woman who is an Irish immigrant comes to the US in sort of the early 1900s, and she is caught up in a particular mystery in the first book and then goes on to want to be a detective in later books, and then there's romance with a police officer, so it really spans the gamut, and each book alone is a delightful read, but the whole arc then gives you kind of the story of this immigrant life in America in the early days, and a bunch of other social issues. So it's just fun enough, but kind of not too stressful. And there are so many of them now, so I'm a little jealous. Like if you start reading this series, you'll just have so much you can read all summer.
Awesome. Loren.
For me, and I read this so late, everyone else had read this, The Beekeeper's Apprentice by Laurie King, which is a book that starts the Mary Russell series. Mary Russell is a 15-year-old who meets Sherlock Holmes in his sort of retirement era and becomes what it sounds like his apprentice while he is a beekeeper, amongst other things, in addition to being an investigator. And it is set in the, actually kind of first in World War I in the 20s. What ends up being a little awkward and weird is that Mary is 15 and Sherlock Holmes is kind of in his late 50s, early 60s, and they end up getting married later. And it's fine. You just kind of have to think of Sherlock Holmes as Benedict Cumberbatch, as not as a 60-year-old. And that ends up, if you just move to that, then you're good. But the books themselves are just wonderful. The mysteries are good. The era is great. The writing of their relationship is just delightful. And again, if you just think of him as Benedict Cumberbatch, it solves a lot of ills that you might have otherwise found. But it is a long series. The first 3 or 4 are spectacular. The rest kind of get into the this is fine. But it will keep you going for a while.
And I can confirm Loren indeed recommended that book to me, and I basically devoured the first 3 and was not available or accessible to other people while I had to read them. And
So I was going to suggest the Rivers of London series in the sort of the same vein, but that would have left us with like 3 mystery series and the idea that all we do is read mysteries, which is not entirely inaccurate, but not entirely true either. Yeah. So instead, I'm going to swerve and recommend 2 sort of linked books by Jennifer Egan, which is A Visit from the Goon Squad and The Candy House. Now, these are they're unusual books in that the structure is a little bit different. They're not sort of single narratives that run all the way through. Each chapter in each book tends to be told from a little bit different perspective. And I think they work for summer reading for 2 reasons. One, if you are able to kind of gulp them down in a setting, you'll see the through lines. You'll see the connections between the different chapters and the characters because they're a little bit subtle. They're not, glaringly obvious about what's happening sort of where. But 2, you can also do them kind of by the drink. You can take smaller sips as you read through each chapter and treat them almost like sort of short stories. And that itself is like very rewarding because each individual setting and story as told in these chapters is really immersive. I mean, it sort of creates a whole sort of life. So that's A Visit from the Goon Squad and The Candy House, which are themselves interrelated in a very subtle way. 2 very different ideas for some summer reading. These are each kind of drawn from backlist. Do we have some more recent releases that we want to suggest to folks for our second recommendations?
I will say I have really been enjoying Emily Henry's new book, The Big Beautiful Life, which is exactly as the title suggests it and is not a mystery at all, but is sort of romance is probably not exactly the right word, but a feel-good book. And Abby Jimenez also has a new book, both of whom I enjoy. I'm about halfway through The Big Beautiful Life. I haven't started the Jimenez book, but I think both are great summer read options.
Mine, I have 2. One, both Radha, actually I think all 3 of us have read, which is How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin.
Did you guys actually read it?
No, I did read it. I read both of them, so I'll explain. So I read this. And it's set in the UK. There's a castle. There's like all kinds of like small British town, and it's a lovely mystery. But in addition to that, Radha and I both, by accident, picked out a book called My Murder, which is not at all the same sort of genre and is more dark and twisty about a woman who is murdered by a serial killer, and there is an agency that brings back very specific victims in a very sort of organized and structured sort of way, and then what happens with that. And it's a good book that has lots of twists. I don't know if I recommend that one as much. The other one that I'm looking forward to reading, so just know your choice when you pick this up, is a book called The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, which is about a magical school, yada, 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 but from the teacher's perspective, which I'm excited to read.
Oh, that does sound good and very up your alley. So my second recommendation, I thought I'd pick some nonfiction, and one that I read just recently while on kind of a long road trip, and that is an oral history of Lollapalooza. With Gen Xer or Gen X adjacent, and really like, Jane's Addiction, Pearl Jam, assorted other bands of the early to mid 1990s. There's just some fantastic stuff, including a whole lot of Courtney Love stories as told in this book. Each year, each summer festival for Lollapalooza is basically a chapter. And I listened to it on audio, and they had different voice actors playing like the different interviewees. So there's a voice for Perry Farrell, there's a voice for Chris Cornell, there's voice for, somebody from Pearl Jam. So it kind of goes over time. I thought it was like a fantastic kind of fun, history to listen back to. It was very easy to go down. And kind of, because Lollapalooza is always in the summer, seems to me like a good summer read. Any other books that we'd like to share? I think that's a pretty excellent reading list for most of our listeners.
I'm impressed that you read nonfiction. I try. I can only listen to it usually.
I find it's easier to listen to nonfiction. I'm currently reading this History of the Romanovs, which I'm sort of doing like eating my vegetables.
Yeah.
But it goes down. It's very well written, but it is also very, very long. So that is not a recommendation.
My nonfiction is largely like comedians who then write books, and then are read by them, and so I can just read them entertaining me via audiobook. It's not that kind of nonfiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe we're interested in some other folks' nonfiction suggestions, not for us to read, but for us to recommend
for others
to other people. Well, I think that wraps up our summer reading. We will see everybody on our next episode. Thanks.